morning and welcome back for the second time, because I just wasn't live the first time, to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne, and our disembodied hands on deck, Justin and Quindy, although I'm starting to think that Quindy should be in charge of starting the stream. Because Justin's making me 5 minutes late all the time. I'm still counting it, darn it. I was in this chair, ready to go. Ah, dear me. Hello, everybody. Yeah, shots fired for sure, Cranston. Well, I've been making, okay, so like, David went back to work, like actually the office reopened, so he went back to work on Monday, and I have been making a super heavy, like, commitment to being here on time, right? Since David left, I don't have the distraction anymore, and I've been here on time, except when Justin's distracted by Kickstarter fulfillment. So, darn it, any tardiness is Reaper's. Reaper time. TM. I didn't see any announcement, Terrazard, but you know. There was no big announcement banner up anyway when I logged in. Here we go. Let's go to... Oh, I'm sure. No, I mean, you can defend Justin all you want. It's kind of silly to do so, in my opinion. He's perfectly capable of defending himself. But, yes, I understand he's part of a very distracting moment in Reaper history. I can still give him crap about it, though. I'm just saying this. If Ed says anything about me being late, like, it's not me this time. That's all right. Whatever. Nobody really cares anyway. Yep, ship orders. Ship orders. Yes. Especially at Reaper, Big Apple. Flinging crap is part of being a Reaper employee, and if you don't have crap flinging ability, you just shouldn't apply. I don't want to carry over the hour, Varl. That's the thing, is I'm trying to stick to a schedule for my diet and exercise and everything, and carrying over, like, you know, that just means everything gets shifted later. So I'm trying to be a good Anne and establish good, fresh habits, because, you know, it's a big thing. I've been, like, living with my boyfriend for a year, for 15 months, 16 months, and we've been here 24/7 together. So, like, I took advantage of this change to do kind of a life reset and refocus on some goals. So I'm trying to be a good and prompt Anne. Yeah, Holly Monster. Yeah, everybody is always 5 minutes late. That's why you give them a time that's weird. I should start the show at like 11:28 or something. He likes margaritas. This is not really news, but yeah, for sure. So I suppose we should decide what we're going to paint today. Hey, Dogfather. Yeah, everybody's got stuff. I know. She's pretty. She's getting there. I think I said we were going to work on some purple today. We might do... Yeah, let's work on some purple today. I think this is... Yeah, definitely. Kraken Ink and Icy Violet, I believe, is the mix that makes this beautiful indigo. Thanks, Zen. I didn't want to cover the outside of it with freehand, although I may put a little bit of freehand on the back. I have not yet decided. We have to continue with our yellow layering on the back. It's not really up to snuff right now. Let me get in focus. Boink. There it is, all nice and sharp. So yeah, we still have a lot of work to do on the yellow back here, in my opinion, to get it presentable, and then we can think about doing a little bit of plant-based freehand back there. But today I think I want to get this purple kind of sorted. We worked a bit on the gold last time, and I still feel like I need a final highlight on that. But I want the purple sorted because I might do the runes in purple on the sword. I hate these runes. Sculptors take notice. Don't ever put raised runes on a blade. It's so hard to paint. Like, I guess the only way to easy paint it is with metallics, because you just, like, throw silver on it with a wash. But that seems just like a cop-out, right? So, it is what it is. Oh, I hate margaritas. I can't ever have them. They're poisonous to me now because of my guts. So, there was a day when I had just a sip of margarita, and I was like, this is the last margarita I'm ever going to taste. Isn't that weird? Yeah, season. Heavy alcohol mixed drinks do in general, but then the acidity of the lime just compounds things for me. So I can have lime juice in other applications, but I can't drink a ton of it, accompanied with hard liquor. It's just bad. Which is sad because I used to really like them. But you know what? That's a lot of calories that I no longer drink. Let's do a 50-50 here on our mixture and see if we can nail that awesome pretty violet we have. Right, exactly. Like Valandar, it's just ridiculous. Like, I don't even care about realism. I just care about, is it a pain to paint? Like, I thought about cutting these suckers off. I'll tell you that. I thought about it. I considered it. Tequila otherwise is actually pretty awesome as far as my metabolism goes, Shadow Raven. It's the one alcohol that peps me up instead of putting me to sleep. So yeah, pretty purples. We're mixing pretty purples, blue violets, and so using Kraken ink, which is a very dark purple with a bluish shift with some icy violet to bring it up really prettily. We could actually also, hold on, let me, I'm curious to see how close. I think wild violet is a little too red. Yeah, wild violet's a little too red for what we're doing. Just a little bit. So we could have used, and rich indigo is a little bit too blue. Otherwise, I would use some new colors today, but yeah, old fashions were my favorites too, Dogfather, but now I have to, like, they really upset my guts. It's just the hard alcohol. Just the way it goes sometimes. Enjoy, those of you who can drink anything you want and eat anything you want, enjoy it while you got it. You just never know what's going to happen to you down the road. So enjoy it. Eat, drink, and be merry indeed. Yeah, I make my own when I make them, but I have to use a lot of club soda these days since I have to de-alcohol it a little bit, percentage-wise. Otherwise, it will pounce me. But I love the flavor of them. And David has a lot of very good whiskeys and bourbons. I'm just doing a 4-to-1 here with my Icy Violet and my Kraken ink, which I think is going to give us our mid-tone, more or less. Yep, there it is. And then I can just, and I do this all the time, when you are mixing yourself a triad. I've got my shadow here. I've got a mid-tone. The way I do highlights is always, I don't like do a whole new mix. I just transfer a good fat brush full of the existing mix, and then I further lighten it. So in this case, we're going to add 2 more drops of Icy Violet. I could also use pure Icy Violet, but I really enjoy having a little bit of that Kraken ink in there because it's in every step. I like having that. I find that it makes a triad work a little better together. And 1 drop of white just to bring it up. Yeah. Yeah, Tarazard. That's good though, right? It just kind of stuff like that where you have to like disrupt your normal eating or drinking pattern is kind of cool because it shows you how little you miss it, right? If you're lucky and you're like, oh, I could just do this, then you know that if you ever want to like do a special diet or, maybe cut down on some of your calories, you could just give up the alcohol and not really care. That's a really useful piece of knowledge in my opinion. Like, until I went gluten-free, I didn't know that, like, I really wouldn't miss bread or anything like that. But as it turns out, I really don't. The only time I give in is if we're in a restaurant, a really nice restaurant, where I know the bread is just killer. Then it's worth going off the diet for. But otherwise, like 99.9% of the year, I do not have gluten. And I really don't miss it. Yeah, aren't they, Quindy? I love these violets. So again, we're using a mix of everybody's favorite, except everybody always complains they don't know how to use this paint. So that's why I'm using this paint, people. It's really made to go with yellow greens. Like, it loves yellow greens to death. But Icy Violet, 4 drops of that, and 1 drop of Kraken ink in the middle here. That's our mid-tone. And then down here, we've got more a 1-to-1 mix of the Kraken ink, and you can tell how strong it is by how it took over that formulation. And then up here, we've got just a brush full of our mid-tone with 2 more drops of Icy Violet and a drop of pure white. You can see that that slides it very nicely. Yeah, I know, Pendrake. It's useless complaining about it because it's the way the sword is sculpted. So I'm just gonna do it. And whatever, you know. One way to do it, actually, let's just go ahead and make it purple. Make it purple. Paint it purple, call it done, as we used to say in the Imps Painting Society. When you don't know what to paint something, paint it purple, call it done. I'm just going to pretty much kind of incise my darkest purple. Just kind of use it as a wash almost. A really controlled wash. I'm not putting it over any more area than I can help, because I don't want to have to go back and touch up everything. But I'm outlining all these little scrollies. Then at least it's an accent color if I'm going to have silly runes on my sword. With Lysette, I believe I went walnut because her skin was really dark, and so I wanted something that would hold up next to that. So when you, on 28s, I do tend to use walnut or a mix of walnut and brown liner because often I'm looking for more of a cartoony effect. So I want a darker liner, a more solid liner. When I transition up, I tend to switch up very much to brown liner because I can control the opacity of it much better. And it gives me a much more subtle, natural shadow. If I'm doing, like, if I was doing a very naturalistic model, though, like the Sphinx, I think Sphinxy, we used brown liner for that reason, because I was going more natural with her. And so that's how I make the choice, is like, if I need to be able to control how solid my lining is, if I want lining that isn't quite sock you in the face, then I will go with brown liner every time. But, or if I'm using it for a shader, like if I'm partially using my liner also as just a quick shading color, then walnut's bad for me because it's going to be really stark and dark. But brown liner is much better because it's I can layer with it very nicely. You can attempt to put on pants, actually. I kind of like that. Everybody should at least attempt to put on pants. Really, you can't get any real work done when not in pants, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, though. All right. So as you can see, just kind of getting that scroll work in there. It doesn't show up really well, but that's because we haven't done any highlighting and shading on the blade. I have a set of pair of pants, actually, Quindy, from the Renaissance Fair in Texas, Scarborough. They are like really thin, really light, loose, like cotton type fabric. They're the comfiest pants on the freaking planet. Even better than pajama pants of any kind that I've ever owned. They're very similar. Like they're even lighter though. They're really thin. Like just beautiful. I love it. Those are my hiking pants. They're my most comfortable pants. My walking pants now. I don't know how I ever did without like hiking pants. Like, I've been walking for years for exercise, and never once did I pick up a good pair of lightweight, warm weather hiking pants, and now I could not live without them. Alright, so just gently going over all these guys. Now, if you get a little bit where there's all sorts of shapes together, you can just brush right over the top. Don't feel you have to outline that. Our paint, as you can see, is just a little bit thinned. You can see it falling off the side of the palette there, so you can see that it has been thinned. And it's not quite, it would be like a heavy wash, I suppose, is what you could call it. Yeah, it's really thin and buttery soft. Yeah, and it's just like, it's so good. Comfy pants, hey, comfy pants are a serious topic. Like, serious life hack, like, necessity here. Comfy pants are, like, where it's at. I know that a lot of my guy friends do not agree on this. They think there are other things, like, better than comfy pants, but it seems to be a thing that men and women tend to disagree on. Like, David does not understand how awesome comfy pants are. All right, gotta make sure I've got all these little areas nice and solid, so that when I come back in, I can go around them. Yeah, I have one pocket in my comfy pants. I do have winter comfy pants that have lots of pockets. But my summer comfy pants only have a pocket for, like, my phone and absolute necessities. Which is okay. Like, would I change it? I don't know, because if I changed it, they wouldn't be as comfy if I had loaded them up with a bunch of heavy items. So I can kind of see why the comfy pants do not have copious pockets. Because when they're that lightweight, putting stuff in the pockets just makes everything fling around and is heavy and uncomfortable. There are reasons known, actually, Pendraig. If you go, I forget which podcast it is, but there was recently a podcast on NPR about pockets in women's clothing, the history thereof. And I think it was just in the 1800s or early 1900s that they started dropping pockets off of women's clothing. And then eventually, you know, putting pockets, if there were pockets, they were just kind of there. They weren't really utilitarian. There we go. All right, so I've got my purple blocked in on this side. I'm going to do it on the other side quick, and then we're going to do purple everywhere. Everywhere. So once again, kind of go and stay in the lines as much as you can, but if you can't, then you can just touch it up. That's why we're doing this over the base coat for our steel. Why we're not, why we didn't paint our NMM steel first. Uh-oh. A motor just started up, and if it's like a leaf blower or a lawnmower, I'm going to have to close the window. They do love to do this stuff, like, right when I'm on stream. Like, that is our apartment complex. That's what they like to do. They're like, oh, Anne just started her show. Quick, beep something loudly or start up a leaf blower. Yeah, sweaters with pockets are a pretty good innovation. We all have our different ways to cope. Alright, so one more layer on that to make sure it stands out. It's also not like right under my window yet. I'm sure it'll find itself and get there. Right now they just have it on idle. They haven't actually started like mowing or blowing anything yet. We'll see. If I have to, I'll close my window and turn on my fan. It's just such a shame to start out with a closed window when it's so beautiful out. There. Oh, I think it's actually like hosing off the pool or something over there. We're right across from the swimming pool. Let me know if it gets annoying and then I'll close the window. My mic should have it mostly sorted because it's not like directly right outside my window, but That's just because they, like, don't make it socially acceptable for you guys to, like, have a purse, Dogfather. Don't get me wrong, pants are usually preferable to purse. Because, you know, purse is just something to forget at restaurants. All right, there we go. Got our purple in pretty solid. I think I'm going to do a kind of a trial. I'm going to grab my highlight here and just kind of trace it over the top of these. And the reason that we put the purple all the way around them, even down in the cracks around them, is so that it would automatically outline the shapes when we came back with our brush. So you can even just use the side of your brush. Oh, except that's fighting me. I need a little more paint on there. You don't want much paint on there though. You want it to stick to the top. But you can just use the side of your brush to get these. You don't have to have a lot of brush control when you've got these raised designs. Possibly the only good thing about these raised designs is that if you're trying to highlight them, you can just do it with the edge of your brush. I like to do it for reels because it's better practice for my freehand, and I like a little more control. But you certainly don't need to. You can just use the side of your brush to pick up these highlights. And I'm going to have to see, probably I'm going to have to mix up my NMM color and see if this is going to work, or if I'm going to need to go even darker with this purple outline. Because right now the gray is exactly the same shade as the purple, so it's reading like all together. Let's see here. Hold on. Let me grab my grays. Gonna do a quick mix of cloudy gray with a touch of blue. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go with a touch of green instead because of the model's color scheme. So I'm gonna grab my Wilderness and do just a tiny schmear. Like when people like Sergio tell you to put just a tiny bit of a different color in your NMM steel, when they say that, they mean a tiny bit. Oh, that needs better shaking. That's why I usually wear jeans. But like, say I squeeze a little bit of my Wilderness green out onto my cap here. Really the only, I like just take a little bit of the green on my brush, like so, and just mix that in. You don't want to change your gray away from gray, but you want the gray to not just be flat black and white, because it tends to look lifeless. Yeah, some companies are making pants with decent pockets for women. Just gonna mix up that gray. So, it's still a gray. You really don't notice the green. You especially won't notice the green because other parts of the model are stronger green. And I'm gonna pop some of this into a new well and drop some white in it for a highlight. Once having mixed up your complex gray for your steel midtone, you want to put white into that rather than mixing a new puddle of gray and adding white, or using just a lighter gray. You want to keep that little bit of color. As I'm flipping things onto the floor. So I'm going to paint the upper part of this blade in a lighter color because that's where the light would fall, so it would be that way. I also want to kind of test out this purple rune work and see if it's really going to work. If there's going to be enough contrast. You want to brush with a really good tip for this so that you can get precise. Let's see here. Yeah. And for NMM, the entire upper side of the blade is going to be painted lighter anyway. A lot of people do stuff with dramatic shadows where you can, like, you know, go from a dark to a light to a dark to a light, you know, they'll alternate. And that can look really good. It makes more sense, though, if you've got a lot of stuff surrounding your model and that's what you're trying to portray. With a straight edge sword like this, you could go either way. Although it's going to be hard to do the dark light, when all these runes are here. Which is yet another reason the runes are kind of annoying. If they were recessed runes, they would be easier. Because you could just paint over the top and then just take some liner and fill in your recessed runes. And there's really no, like, there's no space to really make these runes glow or do anything interesting with them. Usually you want a little bit more space if you're going to do a glow effect. Because you need enough space to show the glow and then show the regular surface around it, and we just don't have enough room here. And I do have this paint thinned pretty heavily, but it's still covering just fine because of the amount of white in it. You can get very, very lightweight with your paint when you're dealing with a lighter color. So the runes are showing up okay with this lighter gray. They're not showing up great on the underside. So yeah, I love this model. This is the only part of the model I think I would change if I could. Like, if I would take some time and file off or scrape off the runes on the blade. As mentioned earlier, though, if you're really just going to put a kind of metallics and then wash or whatever, it's just fine. There we go. Just a little bit more, and then you can see the light. Let's put it under reflection on it while we're at it. And we have this light gray. I'm going to actually thin it even more so I can get a little bit of a blend here. It's really, the runes also make it hard to do a traditional NMM because the demarcation line where the bend in the blade happens here is really, really obscured by the runes, so it's hard to make that evident. So really what you probably want to do is just a little bit of lighter color along the bottom edge. Don't take it up very much. I'll do a shadow. This is kind of our test real quick, since I had the purple out and I wanted to test it. I don't know if this purple is going to stay, though. I may have to make it NMM gold instead, because the purple is just too close to the gray. If you're putting all this work into something, then it should stand out. Like, if you're putting work into something and it's hard to see, like it doesn't stand out, nobody notices it, then that's really just not a win. So, if you're going to do that work, then at least make sure that your work is showing up and people will notice it. But yeah, I think this purple isn't bright enough. It isn't different enough from the gray. So I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm going to use the edge of my brush for this last edge highlight here. With a good sculpt, that's pretty easy to do. If you end up with little wobblies like I did there, just bring your base coat in and blend them in. Sometimes when the sculpt isn't great, or if there's a mold line that you missed, you'll find it harder to do that. Because side edging and edging with the side of the brush really does depend on the sculpt and how crisp it is. So if there are kind of wobbly areas, or when you were cleaning it, it got a little bit compromised, or you didn't clean it and the mold line is right there, you can have less success with using the side of your brush to do an edge highlight. Yep, probably, Quindy. That's what I said. If you're going to use a metallic and you're going to put a wash on it, then these runes are fine. And will give you the best results, probably. But if you're not doing that, he said, this is like fine, it's just going to make it hard to paint well. So, as I said, you know, it's cool, but if I could change one thing on this figure, that's what I would change. I think it's fair to have an opinion. I don't have to be like a total everything Reaper does is awesome. I wasn't even that way when I was working on site. Alright, I'm going to get some brown liner or gray liner. I do like gray liner for steel NMM for the shadows because you can thin it. It's so much easier to blend up from that dark to that light when you have a dark paint that has a bit of translucency to it. So gray liner 9065 is a go-to for me for that. The model, she is an elf wizard. Her name is Lysette. We're painting her as a wood elf, although she's traditionally not. But I wanted to kind of do that. So that's what, there she is, Tabitha. Just mucking around with the sword to decide if I'm going to change the color of the runes on the blade. Which I almost certainly am now. Just because they're not standing out the way that I would like them to. Especially after I highlight them. But jury's still out, and we'll try to at least put some shadows in here and see how it mounts up. Putting just a tiny bit of my base gray into my liner for my shadow also is a trick I use to make everything work a little better together. Hello, Brazil. How you doing, Lucas? I think I want to go gold with it, having tried the purple. I mean, the purple is a great accent, but we already have purple on the handle of the sword, so we have a touch of purple here and here. So we don't have to have this accent here. It's almost a little bit too much. So I'll likely take those runes gold instead. But again, I like to finish it out before I make the judgment call. Because sometimes even putting a little bit of a shadow in here is going to help a lot. Because you want a shadow. You need dark shadows with your NMM. It's necessary. You cannot just do all medium gray. You always want that heavy shadow under the area where your highlight is. And I haven't put my brightest highlight in yet either, so I'm just going to block in. And what I'm doing is putting this right under the line where you shift from the top of the blade, which is lighter, to the bottom of the blade, which is darker. That's where this shadow goes. Trying to keep it pretty thin. That one got a little wibbly. Blend it in and straighten it out. We also haven't done white edging around the edge of the blade and down the middle. So there's a lot of NMM steps we haven't done. So judging this at this point is judging something that's not completed. Can also take this dark color and make some of these runes stand out a little bit better since it's right along where they are. So the liners will help these runes stand out a little bit more. Like so. I'm going to thin down my base color a little bit more so I can get it a little more blended. The base color being thicker was fine when we were in the beginning, but now I want it to be a little bit more blendable. So our colors are, let's back up, the grays and the liner. So you can see how the liner's maybe a little bit more faded looking, and that's because I threw a brush full of this into it. That just makes these play a little better together. You still retain a fairly dark shadow, you just also have it a little bit closer to your midtone, so it's a little bit easier to blend. And when you're blending NMM steel, that's one of the hardest blends ever because you're going from almost black to pure white over the course of the surface. And when you're doing 28mm, your surface is very small. It's a lot easier on a bigger model where you have the room. But with these little guys, NMM steel blends are one of the hardest things. Now I'm just going back in with my midtone, picking up some of that liner and blending it in where it got really stark. I'll make a couple of like spot mixes kind of halfway between the two colors sometimes. I don't really have room to wet blend here, but since I thinned my gray, I can kind of layer it over the edge of the dark and make a blend that way. So we've got kind of that shadow coming up. Yeah, putting the liners out in a fast palette would be a smart idea. I think you're right, Hendrik. I don't know if that's like part of the plan though, as far as the fast palettes. If each color is only going to go in one fast palette, which I think was originally kind of the goal. That was a long time ago though, and Ed has slept since then, and he's probably changed his mind. Alright, now I want that bottom edge to be lighter. Consistently lighter. I'm almost ready to go and take some white in here and see how this whole thing kind of turns out. Notice I am doing the back side so that if I decide to change everything, I won't have to repaint the entire front side of it. Not that that matters too much, but sometimes doing a test on something that's out of the way is a little bit less nerve-wracking. I think I'm going to make this just a little bit lighter toward the tip. All right. I'm going to grab some pure white now and try to bring in my edge highlights on this sword and see how it looks. Hopefully this has given you guys an idea though on how these runes can make things more difficult. So if you are painting this model, if you're trying to do non-metallic metal on it, you may want to actually just slice off the runes and repaint them freehand. That's probably what I would do, given the... Yeah, you can always take a picture and then you know what the rune design is and you can replicate it. Or, if you're doing it metallic, you don't have to worry very much. And I would just probably just do a base and a wash then. should bring out all your details just fine. Metallics are a lot less problematic with these raised runes than NMM is. Normally, though, on this model, I would want NMM because I want to bring out all these small details that I have, and it would be very hard to do that with metallics. So it's kind of like a trade, like you're really kind of like, what you're going to do. It is possible to bring out small details with metallic paint. It just takes a fair amount of work. You definitely need to highlight and shade dramatically to get it to work. I'm going to get the top edge, and that's just run your brush along it, the side of your brush. Like I said, as long as the sculpt is good and you don't have too much paint on your brush, you'll be fine with using the side of the brush to edge highlight. It makes it very simple. One very bright edge. Yeah, that's the problem, Valandar, is the runes are very, like, it's hard to just paint the sword, because the runes take up so much of the blade. So, edge highlighting both sides. Yeah, the underside of that blade is a bit wobbly, so it's got, it's breaking up a little bit, so I'll have to go back in to make sure that that's clear. And I won't use the edge of my, or the side of my brush for that. I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. And then the last place that a white line would be is down the middle of the blade, and this is where the runes are really going to interrupt this visually. So we're going to kind of have to just look at where these go and if it is even feasible to do most of the blade like this. Like, we can see a couple of areas. The problem is your line has to be really thin and consistent. Like, you have to be able to kind of draw that line with your eye, and I don't know that this is going to really work. Like, I'm just going to go slow. The places you can do it are near the hilt and out at the tip. So you've got very little sword out here to do it on. And again, you can use, if it's a good sculpt, you can use the side of your brush for this. Very, very gently to get that line right out there. See, a lot of these runes are right down that area, so you're just not going to be able to do it. Yeah. Alright, now I'm going to come in with those purple highlights and see how it looks. And if I don't like it, we're just going to switch it. Yeah, I mean, just painting it as a metallic and doing simple washes and highlights are definitely less work than this. And probably a little bit more successful. But I wanted to do NMM on this one because of all the fine details she's got, so I am now locked into NMM. One other thing here is that since these lines are so narrow, we are losing the purple a little bit. It tends to gray out because this color isn't bright enough. So one thing I may consider is doing a glaze of a brighter purple. And the purple I'm thinking of using is actually Carnival Purple. So I might try that once I get these highlighted. I want to highlight them first, because I want to give the purple something lighter to go over. If you're going to do that sort of thing, you really want a light base coat. It doesn't have to be pure white. It just needs to be lighter. Mixing a little bit of my highlight with some pure white here just to put some really light touches on certain areas. And then this purple glaze is going to be the last thing I try to make this work. And if it doesn't work, then we'll switch. I mean, it's not like terrible. I do need to bring up the bottom of the blade a little bit where it's gotten very dark here. And that's going to be a mixture of my light and my dark. But you do want an under reflection here. You don't want that dark to be too overwhelming. So if you see just a really heavy shadow, bring it back up. That's a little better. Still got a lot of dark in there. A glaze might help it. This is a lot of fiddling, though, that I wouldn't have to do otherwise. I'm going to do a tiny glaze. Tiny glaze, and I mean tiny glaze, like I'm mixing up like a brush full of paint. Thing is, we need to keep a shadow, but we don't need to keep that much of a shadow. So glaze, bringing my brush back in to just kind of gently pull extra paint off the top. Remember, with a glaze, you do not want it to pool. You want it to dry nicely. So that brought it up a bit. All right, well, let's try a purple glaze and see. We'll use the new Carnival Purple. I'm almost done with my PDF for you guys on Patreon. For those of you who don't know that I have one, I have a Patreon. And the $5 level is pretty much all my write-ups about Master Series paints. How to use them, you know, triads if they don't come in a good triad, stuff like that. Kind of what their consistency and characteristics are. That's patreon.com/paintingbig. And you can go check it out. I've got some free stuff, especially if you are into Master Series paints, but you haven't yet watched my class on thinning them. If you go over to the Reaper YouTube, you can find a video called Thinning Msp Paints, which is my class from ReaperCon last year. And it has a free PDF on my Patreon that summarizes the points if you don't want to always have to watch the hour-and-a-half long thing. So Carnival is more red. A little bit more red. So that will be departing from our violet color scheme a little bit. But I need some punch, because you can see how vibrant it is. So I'm going to try to put a little glaze of this over the top of this, and if I don't like it, well then we're just back to the drawing board, and we were going to be that anyway. Now this is going to be spot glazing. I'm not putting it just all over everything like I just did that metal glaze. I'm just painting it a little bit over these runes, just brushing it real light. Unless the runes are all together, then I can put a little heavier coat. I just don't know. Like, that brought the purple out anyway. Thank you for the link to my Patreon and the Thinning Msp Paints thing. That is in the chat, guys. Remember, that's just totally free, so take advantage of it. If you use MSP and you're working with thinner applications of it, like you're starting to learn layering and blending and stuff, and glazing, it's really useful. Yeah, I would say clear purple's fine. I'm just like, I was playing with Carnival yesterday for the PDF, so I thought I would just use Carnival. So that makes it a little bit brighter. I don't know. Jury is still out. Just not sold on that purple. I'm going to get my purple done everywhere else, though. You go back to my original triad and my original colors, and one thing you can do on featureless sword handles like this is you can suggest that there's a leather wrap there. So you can essentially do a couple of dashes with your shadow. And then you can reinforce those with your highlights. I do bring up in that PDF, Grey Wolf, that Carnival is very much like a slightly redder clear purple. So. But I'm not going to tell you what else I bring up in that PDF, because then you wouldn't need to actually go to my Patreon. I'm going to just put a highlight right where in between where I put a shadow a moment ago. These are easy and fun because they're little dashes, and there you can suggest that there is a leather wrap, just like there's a wrap over here. So that's really nice. I think I need to hit some things back here. This is gold for sure on this purple bag, and I want some leather here on those gray straps. So I'm gonna grab some russet brown and just do a quick base on those. You can get away with the slightly lighter dark brown back here because it's not near to her skin tone. I was using darker colors on much of the rest of the model because I didn't want it to conflict with her skin too much. And I'll still shade this with the walnut. But it's time to just get these suckers blocked in. They're bugging me. There we go. There we get that figured out. Alrighty, I need my rich leather just to block in that top of that bag, that design. So I'm pretty much filling in now. It's like I still have a couple of areas that I hadn't put a base on, and now I'm annoyed at them, so I'm gonna tackle that. And it's almost stretch time. I think I am just gonna paint in the entire thing, come back and line it though. I lined it to see what it was, but now I understand what it is, so I can just put a base coat over the top and reline it. There we go. Alright. That's okay. It's getting there. Okay, let's get this purple highlighted and shaded. Oh wait, we're gonna actually take take a stretch break. So let's do that before I forget and totally don't take a stretch break. I'm gonna refocus on the down low here so you guys can have a good view of her while I stretch. There she is, all hanging out. The inside of her dress there, rather than a cloak, but yes. Thanks, Tabitha. We do a lot of freehand on here from time to time if the model warrants it. For a while there we were doing just a crap ton. I think that's the most elaborate small freehand I've done on a 28 on this stream, though. Alright, so if you've been sitting around like I have, please get up and stretch so your spine remembers the other way it can bend. Oh, it's gold, War Shadow. I mean, you really can't tell the difference at this level, in my opinion. Like, I feel like gold and brass and MM are the same on a 28mm. I feel like you know, you can go a little bit colder with your gold and then you'd end up looking brassier. But your highlights are very similar. Like, essentially, if this was brass, I wouldn't have used rich leather. I would have mixed in a little bit more, maybe of a brown liner. Because brass doesn't have those warm shadows, really, unless it's tarnished, though. And that's the thing, is that brass with just a little bit of tarnish on it looks just like gold. So at this scale, I really don't feel like there's a big difference. If I was trying to show that it was brass, I think I would probably do it through verdigris, because gold never verdigris. So that would suggest a different metal. But I really, really feel like brass and gold look much the same on a 28. I'm going to do my floor stretch, and I will be right back. Here we go. Stretch is always nice. But yeah, I feel like a lot of those like delineations, those subtle delineations between like different gold metals and stuff like that are lost on 28 mil. I feel like it's easier to do. It's the same thing with like silk and satin texture. If you're actually trying to do it, it is doable on a 28. But it's a lot, you have a lot more room to really show it on a bust or a larger model, like a 75. Oh, that reminds me, since we're talking about like gold, that always makes me think of Egypt. I was reading my pigments book yesterday, guys. It's kind of a fun book. It doesn't go into a lot of like details of chemistry, but it turns out that Egyptian blue, which we mentioned yesterday, actually is the only pigment that emits infrared light. I think they said if a blue or red light is shown upon it, then they actually discovered that it will glow with infrared because of the way they made it, like the chemistry of it, which is super funky. So they can like look at something that was painted with Egyptian blue, and if they shine specific lights on it, they can look at it with an infrared sensor and see the design that was painted on the pottery or whatever. So yeah, super interesting. Karoo, it's always relative. Obviously, I keep my hand in the small stuff because I do this stream. Left to my own devices, I don't think I'd paint under 75 millimeter anymore. I just so much enjoy having the space. Like, having all the room to do the textures and stuff. Maybe 54. I guess my halfling. We're going to work on the halfling today, guys, by the way, on my stream this afternoon. This is a good opportunity to mention my stream. Yay! I have my own stream on my own Twitch channel. I do it on Thursday. I usually paint my competition level stuff on there. And we've been working on a halfling, rogue assassin. And I feel like working on her again. So I think we've been working on a bunch of busts too, but I looked at her the other day and realized I felt like working on her again, so I'm going to take advantage of that. I think 3 models might be my optimum, guys. Like, remember how I mentioned that I get overwhelmed if I have too many in-progress models on my table? I think 3 is the magic number. Thanks for the shout-out, Quindy. Well, 28 millimeter models are going to be in this range, right? Even halflings at 28 are still 28 in general. The scale is very similar. The way you paint it is very similar. Mouselings are more like chibis, in my opinion, because they have the big heads and the small bodies. So I think that painting them more like you'd paint a chibi makes sense. Yeah, big mouselings would be more like repainting Pops, right? Like the Funko Pop stuff. Like repainting those. I have a couple of doggy Pops. I have Ghost from Game of Thrones, and I have Dog Meat from Fallout as Pops. And I have thought about repainting the Dog Meat because it's so cute. But yeah, 3, I think. I've been trying to find a good spot, a good comfort level for how many projects I have going at once. And 1 isn't enough because inevitably I'll get kind of to a stalling point, or I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here, or I'm kind of sick of looking at this. So that was with Templar, right? And then I went to Knoll, and that was nice. But then I looked at Halfling the other day because I kept her out on my shelf. I didn't put her in the Lost Love cabinet, and realized that I was back into the mood to work on her. So I think that 3 models, and probably I should have them be different scales. Maybe even different genres. That's the way I used to break when I was burned out. I would break the burnout. By switching size or scale, or switching genre. I found that those two switch ups were really effective if I was kind of burned out on painting. Switching that really made me like turn around and want to paint again. Lord Dave. Everybody's different, Lord Dave. Some people love the busyness of having all sorts of models out on their work surface. Like, they really enjoy all those little options. They spread them all out. They're like, I feel like working on this right now, and they just do it. For me, maybe it's because of my background as a staff painter, but I start feeling overwhelmed very quickly. So, and then I just lose all urge to paint. Oh, it's twitch.tv/paintingbig, Deathray. Thanks for asking. Painting Big, all one word. That's my Patreon also. But yeah, I mostly work on higher end stuff. The Halfling is which model is she? She's my Black Crow, I think. And she's big. So she's like a 75mm Halfling. Here, I was just using some liner to define the wraps here on the staff a little better. Hold on, let me grab Halfling. She hasn't been under the camera for a while. I got stalled out on a death ray on her freehand. Like, I have a title for her now, guys, though. Because she's all scraped up and she's got all this muck that I'm painting on the base and everything. She's kind of looking like she's in a dungeon with the stone that she's standing on. So her title is going to be Too Long in the Dark. Sometimes if you're going to put a title on something, like, you have to wait for the model to develop. But yeah, so there's still some stuff I need to do. I need to make sure both of the glowing daggers are done. I need to work on coloring in the freehand, the spades. She has little spades going up her leg too. And then I need to finish out mapping in the freehand on the back here, and also work on cloth texture on the back and on a little bit on the underside. Her head is big, I think, because she's a halfling, and they kind of just decided to portray the halfling as that. The dwarf that is her friend, that's also in scale, is actually not quite that bad. This is another Black Crow. She also has a slightly larger head, but her body's bigger. Her feet are really big. It's just kind of, I think, the art style. But yeah, so... Hold on. Oh, no! I was going to bring Gollum in to show you guys the next project, but at the end of the stream, but I left him out there. I just washed the bronze Gollum for tomorrow. We're starting a new model tomorrow, guys. Yay! I'm going to base coat him in black or dark gray or dark brown. I haven't decided yet. He needs a dark base coat so we can jump right in with the true metallics. Yeah, I really feel it's the art style. They just decided to portray their characters just with that slightly larger head size for the humanoids, for the small humanoids. It works. It was fun to... It made her face more fun to paint, and it definitely is a distinctive visual style, so... But yeah, she's really scarily close to done, so I think we'll probably do some cloth texture this afternoon, and we'll fill in maybe the freehand on the underside of the cloak. Because the sooner I can glue this stuff on, the better. There comes a point where I really hate it that a model is still in pieces, even though when you're doing complex freehand like that, it's just so much easier to do it if the cloak's not attached to the model. But yeah, so we'll work on halfling today. I'm in the mood to work on the halfling. And yeah, once she's done, I can actually, then if I'm allowing myself 3 open models at a time, I can start a new one. And I think I know exactly which one I want to start. Which is the Ignis Art Fairy, if you guys are familiar, from their 75 Dreams line. I'm probably going to start her really fast, like I did the Knoll. Like fast, really speed paint with the wet palette and everything to really block her in. Yeah, the mud is, I put it on the base too. The mud on the pants is entirely paint. I didn't actually use a texturing agent there. But the base I did use an actual texture product. Alright, so it's going to go in here and we're going to line the back as well. This is just real thin. I'm using the same liner that I used for the shadows on the sword, just because it's dark, so it's just I don't need a color or anything. I just need a slightly darker line to bring out these wraps. Yeah, sometimes with those garage kits, a lot of them are bootleg, because a lot of them are, I learned this the hard way, a lot of them are ripped off from IPs and reproduced, and the ones that aren't tend to be very limited. So I have one big garage kit. She's even bigger than Soldier. I think she's 18 inches from bottom to top, by a company called Hard Hero, and it's the Red Sonja model. And I've had it for eternity. I really should start painting her. If I don't, I need to just find a buyer for her because she's such a huge project. I probably need to take her out. I mean, she'd be a good one to practice airbrushing on because she's immense. But yeah, there were several Tomb Raider Lara Croft garage kits that I really wanted that I just couldn't get because I was too slow off the mark and they were very limited runs. I love me some Tomb Raider. So that's the nice thing about Reaper's tendency to like keep stuff in general in print, with the exception, sometimes things will go away when they just don't sell, but like they'll never do a limited thing just to do a limited thing, or if they do, it'll like be like ReaperCon paint, and it'll usually show up again at some point. But it's not like they're trying to do just a limited run of 200 of a model, and then they decide, oh, well, that's it. Bye, sorry for everybody who didn't get it. Ed doesn't believe in that business model. Yeah, sometimes there is like a sellout period and then you gotta wait for a restock, but that's different. At least it'll be back eventually. Alright, so after I line, we'll do some shadows on this wrap. I want to do some shadows back here as well. I probably want to line a little bit back here. The more you can make your little details stand out, and lining is a very good tool for that. It's a form of shading. It's good shading for when you don't have room to do real, like, elaborate shading. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they are mostly resin kits. You are correct. Silverthorn metal also will wear molds down, but it depends kind of on the model. Like a big model, like a dragon, like that, something that would be the size of some of those resin garage kits, would absolutely rip out molds super fast. The thicker the metal parts, the more heat pitting and damage you generally get to have, because the heat concentrates so much in a thick piece. By my understanding, the way that casting things were explained to me long ago. So smaller pieces you can run, a lot more than you can do a resin mold, but with big pieces, they do tend to wear and pull out and get bad stuff. Alright, so just kind of doing some lining here to make sure that things are defined and stand out well from each other. It helps to crisp up everything. I very much believe in lining on 28 mil. I find it's more optional on bigger figures because you can often just suggest with the placement of your shadows. You could just have a natural shadow that's dark. You don't need a line there so much. I don't know if I lined anywhere on Templar. I think I did. Yeah, I did do some lining on Templar though, because it just crisps up. I'll likely use glazes to knock that down a peg, because a really dark line won't look right on a bust. It's always considerations of scale. How when you start painting much larger models, there are things that you can do that you have more room to do, and there are things that you don't want to do as much because it doesn't look right. So it very much is you can paint a 28 millimeter like you paint a bust, and you can paint a bust like you paint a 28 millimeter within reason, but you will have to make compromises along the way. Well, that, and also price, Silverthorn, because the big dragons just got too expensive in metal. You just couldn't put it out at a price point that anybody would buy. That's why Bones was such like a perfect save for us at Reaper. If we wanted to put out big dragons, it gave us a way to do that. Because big dragons are a long-term tradition in miniatures, right? It's just they always were so problematic. Like, the ones that had a higher lead content would just sag under their own weight. And then the ones with a higher tin content, once the price of tin shot up, were just too expensive to make and sell. We've still got quite a bit of work to do on this one. I've got to finish outer yellow, highlight this green. I have to finish the other side of the sword. I got to change the color of the runes on the sword if I decide to do that. I need to do the wood, and I'm highlighting all the purple now, but I don't know if we'll get it done. I need to finish up the NMM gold. I need to do her eyes. Need to highlight leather. As you can see, we actually have a lot more than you think, Daffodweir. So I have not chosen a replacement for her yet. I typically do not choose the replacement model until I'm about a week. Yeah, the flowers aren't done. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot on this model. I guess it just goes to show that if you finish certain key points on the model, then it looks like it's very close to done. And that can trick you as a painter. Like, I would always shortcut. Like, I'd be like, oh, that's good enough. But then when I started to compete, it really wasn't a good habit that I'd got myself into, to just say, oh, well, I just, it looks done. It's good enough, right? So I started paying a lot of attention to little fine details and making sure that I hit everything, that I hit every little bit. And that's a lot. Attention to detail is definitely a criteria in the Master Series Open. So even if you feel like something like maybe this wood doesn't warrant like much of a highlight, at least put a highlight on it. Show that you thought about it. Show that you brought out the detail, even if there's not much detail. But just those little touches and the little bits of attention to detail are really the things that make a model look really good at the end. Like, they can look good without them, but it'll look much better when everything is in its place and you can see all the details. Just makes a big difference. It's like the difference between me just lining these little wrap things and me going in now with highlighting and shading to make the wrap things really stand out a lot better and give them like three-dimensionality. And again, this is all up to your goals. I wanted to compete in painting competitions and be very happy with my work. I mean, probably my primary motivation isn't necessarily the competition itself, but that I want to produce something that is lovely and makes me happy. And for it to do that, it needs to be at a certain level for me. So in order for me to look at my work and just be really happy with what I've done, like, that's really my goal. That's why I really loved my Sacrifice bust, even though I knew she wouldn't win Crystal Brush. She was created for Crystal Brush. But using Crystal Brush as a motivator allowed me to get her done to a higher standard than I had ever painted anything. And she's definitely, up until Templar Lady, she's the best thing I've done. So when I talk about using competitions as a motivator, it isn't necessarily, the motivation isn't necessarily to win, but it gives you a deadline and it inspires you to try different things. And if it means that at the end you've finished a model that you are really, really happy with, that's beautiful in your eyes and just makes you happy to look at, win. That's the win. That's what I aim for. I don't even want to think. Maldecar Metal would be $1,000 model at least. And it'd be more than that because it would be like, you'd only be able to do 5 before your mold ripped out. Maybe 2. I'm just putting a final little really light highlight at the top of each of these little wraps. See, it just makes everything stand out a little bit better. Yeah, and that's exactly the right motivation, I think, Karu. I mean, some people get hyper competitive and they really want to win, and that's their motivator. Like, that really gets them to push themselves. So everybody's different, right? But if you're not a super competitive person, but you really love to paint and you'd love to see like how far you can go, like, and you want to produce something that makes you really happy, then competitions can be a great motivator that way. You just go in with that goal instead of a winning goal. It's probably a better goal anyway, because then at least you've got the work at the end that you're super proud of and happy with. And if you don't win, then you've still got that, right? Yay, I like those wraps. Those are good wraps. Right, yeah, there's always a bigger fish. Like, Kirill can totally, win over me in a competition. There are people in this world who can totally, absolutely paint better. And at more the point, like, they're also sculptors. So, like, they've already got an advantage there. They can sculpt significant changes to a model or even sculpt their own model. But there's some stuff that I can do very, very well, and so I just like to bring it and push myself and see what I can do. There's always something new to learn too, and I take a lot of joy in learning, so I like to try new techniques and learn new things. That's why I'm working more with the well palette lately, is I'm trying to figure out how to use it in my painting methodology. It's never something that I would turn to all the time, but I think I just feel like it's got a specific use for me, and I just want to find that use. Everything is a potentially useful tool. Even things that you've tried in the past that frustrated the heck out of you, that you threw to the side, 5 years later, you may try it again and go, oh, man, if only I had thought to use it this way. So never just discard a color or a, tool because you think you try it once and you're just like, eh. Because with more time and more experience in the hobby, it may really be revealed to you how that thing can be used by you. And it may not be the use that anybody else has for it. Have fun. Have a good lunch, Shadow Raven. Yeah, Creature Caster does some beautiful stuff. I kind of hope we get them at ReaperCon one of these years. Creature Caster. Even though a lot of their stuff is like kind of riffs on GW type of things, nonetheless, they've got beautiful models. But yeah, I'm excited to finish Halfling and choose a new model to work on. I do think it's going to be the Fairy, but we'll see. There's so many beautiful models out there now, and like there's so much coming up. Like I can't tell you guys how I'm looking forward to ReaperCon this year. Like I'm sure there are going to be people painting like some busts and 75s and 28s that I haven't even seen, right? And it's going to be so fun and exciting to see all those different models all in one place. Because I know like some of the Kickstarters out there, like were pretty obscure, but they're beautiful models. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think ReaperCon's going to kick butt this year. May not be quite as big, just because I know a lot of people still aren't comfortable with travel, but I think it's going to be a good show. I'm really psyched for it. David and I got our airplane tickets yesterday. So that at least is accomplished, and we've got our hotel, so it's ReaperCon or bust. It'll be nice to get back to a con. Alright, I will finish all this purple if it kills me. Oh, I'm not going to have time, am I? Yeah, but now you have all the fun excitement, like, coming up in Laddersill. Now you have, like, you're just going to explode onto the scene. You're going to be so happy. It's so much fun. The gaming community, especially the Reaper community, but the gaming community in general, conventions are a hoot. They're a ton of fun. These little tiny, like, bits on her shoulders are difficult. Because they're so small. I'm not going to get this done quite in time. Still have a little bit of purple to do. I haven't done the front of here or that or that or that. So yeah, a bit of extra purple to get done at some point in the future. That's cool, Agent Marvel. We missed you. I hope you got tasty foods though, since you went grocery shopping. Yeah, I think a lot of people got into the hobby during quarantine, which is great, because now we're going to have all sorts of new friends at the conventions. If you are into mini painting, specifically ReaperCon is a great convention because its focus is on painting and sculpting and classes. And then at night, people, there is role playing and there is other gaming, but the focus is on the hobby, and that makes us really unique. We're the first con to really do that. So if you just love mini painting and you want to hang out and paint with a bunch of other people who love mini painting, ReaperCon. There we go. Little petals. So I don't have the model to show you that will be starting tomorrow, but it is the Greek Odyssey Golem. I think he's a bronze golem, but I don't know what golem he is. He's cool though. He's way cool and chunky, and we're gonna do true metallics on him. So After that, after this project, nobody gets to complain that Anne does too much NMM anymore, because I am going to hard commit to doing a ton of metal on this golem. Well, see how crazy we go. Yeah, totally. Like, nothing says you have to come to ReaperCon this year. Like, a lot of people, their lives got upended during the pandemic, and they're still kind of upended, so we will miss you, but we will absolutely, like, root for you to make it in some future year so that we can meet you. Alrighty, folks. Well, that's what we did today. So, I do a lot of it, Avian. So, for a while there, people were like, why don't you do more metallics? So, I'm going to do some metallics. Even though, like, I really find that I like them better on bigger models, so that's why I'm doing the bronze golem. Because it's a big chunk of thing, and so it'll be fun to do metallics on. Alrighty, so what we did today is we worked on our purple, and we also like kind of played with NMM on our sword to see if we liked purple runes. And the answer is pretty much, I don't think so. So we're going to go back to the drawing board on those runes. But for now, we otherwise worked on a lot of purple detailing. So lining and sharpening a lot of our purples. And picking out some details. We filled in a little bit of leather where we needed to. We talked about competitions. We talked about different scales. We talked about a little bit about, you know, like switching genre or scale if you're burned out on miniatures and when you want to give the oomph back to paint. That's a great tactic. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, tomorrow is Bronze Golem. He's drying out in the kitchen on his paper towel. I washed him right before the show. So he will be ready to go tomorrow, and I hope you all tune in. Also remember, this afternoon at 4 p.m. USA Central Time, I will be over on my own Twitch channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig, where I will be painting Ms. Halfling here, working on her freehand and probably some cloth texture. So there we go. I'm glad you all showed. I hope you had fun. I was thinking gold War Shadow. I think gold. I think I want to extend my shiny gold up there. I think the NMM treatment on those runes might be just what they need, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, there we go. And yeah, that's all there is. Thank you all for showing up. I really appreciate you hanging around. I know watching folks ship boxes is far more entertaining. Are we going back to the stream? Oh, okay. Plunk back in the fulfillment stream. Right. Got you. Yes. And Crafty Creative with Josh Foreman at 2 p.m. Central. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. I love having you around. Hopefully I'll see a bunch of you later. And yeah, have a great day.